What's going on, guys? Welcome in to this No Pulp webisode podcast, whatever you want to call it. It's quarantined No Pulp. I'm your host, Cameron Macaulay, and I am joined by Jaron May. Jaron, how you doing?
I am great. I'm ready to talk some sports because I've been deprived over the past couple days and weeks.
We have all been deprived, but hey, that doesn't mean there isn't sports news to talk about, especially in the college world. But hey, what everybody's talking about, let's get right into it. The NFL draft went on this weekend. There's plenty of things to talk about. And listen, we have awesome stuff at CitrusTV. The guys over at Mr. Irrelevant Podcast have been rocking out with it. So not to step on their shoes too much, but Jaron, give me your best picks from this NFL draft.
All right, so I got two best picks. Number 5, Tua Tagovailoa, who went to the Dolphins. Listen, we all know that he's had injury issues before. He's coming back from a hip and from a leg and whatever you want to say. He's had those issues, but the Dolphins liked what they saw in his workout videos. I looked at those videos as well. I liked it, and he's just too good to not take at number 5, especially for an organization like the Dolphins that are in desperate need of help and need of a QB. This man threw for 76 touchdowns and only 9 interceptions in 24 career starts. Tua Tagovailoa could easily be the best QB in this year's class. So if you can get him at 5, that's a steal for the Dolphins. Now, my second best pick is CeeDee Lamb to the Cowboys at pick number 17. The wide receiver is an absolute steal at pick 17 because you can argue that he's the best wide receiver in this class, and he goes number 3. He also falls to number 17 when you thought that he was going to be maybe a top 10 or top 15, and he just falls right into the laps of the Cowboys, who didn't really need another weapon on the outside, but it's kind of best available at that point. And then you put him with Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield, and then you got Dak Prescott leading the charge. That is a top offense in this league. So those are my 2 best picks.
Yeah, I like both of those picks too. I mean, Tua Tagovailoa, there's plenty that's been said about him, but if you're okay with the medicals, and the Dolphins obviously were, he's too good a quarterback prospect to really pass up at 5 because he has all the makings of a franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
Is he the best? I don't know. I'm really high on Joe Burrow. He is a special breed of quarterback, but Tua Tagovailoa is a really nice consolation prize for the Dolphins. My favorite picks, tackles. They're not sexy, but they win football games. My favorite tackle in this draft class by a wide margin was Jedrick Wills, and he went second off the board in terms of tackles, number 10 to the Browns. They got themselves an absolute steal. I know there are tackles in this class that are more athletic, that have a higher upside, a higher ceiling, but when it comes to technique and intelligence from a tackle, Jedrick Wills is the best in this class, and frankly, it is not even close. If you put the tapes of a Tristan Wirfs or a Mekhi Becton next to Jedrick Wills, they look like project players, but because that is how polished and refined and ready Jedrick Wills is. He's an awesome run protector. He was maybe the best player on that Alabama team flat out, period, because he's an excellent pass protector. He is intelligent. He studies his opponents. He knows them inside out. And he's just a guy that I know that if I'm the Browns, I can turn this pick in, sleep easy at night. He's going to come on and be a 10-year starter at tackle. And when you get that at number 10, that is awesome, awesome value. My second best pick is a sleeper wide receiver that I had as wide receiver number 4 in this entire draft class, and somehow he fell towards the back end of the second round. That is Denzel Mims to the New York Jets. This guy has everything you want in a wide receiver. Maybe he's not the best at any one thing, but he is good at everything. First of all, you're talking about a 6'3", 200-pound guy that ran a 4.3 840 at the combine. So he is athletic, but he also has an insanely large catch radius and excellent ball skills. And basically, Baylor, if they ever got one-on-one with him, cornerback plays back, they're going to throw that back shoulder fade to the sideline, and he made some ridiculous catches. And if that cornerback then comes to stop that play press coverage, stop that, Mims will just go right past him and win on the deep ball. This is a guy that I am super excited about, super high on. I had him as the best wide receiver outside of that big 3, and I think the Jets got themselves a steal at 59. And when you consider they moved down, got an extra pick, and still got their man, that's beautiful job by Joe Douglas.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on the 2 big positions of this draft. They were very deep in wide receivers, and you can see that throughout the entire draft. quality guys were getting picked from round 1 to round 7. And then also, like you said, tackles with Wills. I mean, there were a lot of great tackles. It was basically, I mean, there weren't much other offensive line talent in this draft, but tackles specifically were really good in 2020.
Yeah, and great picks were made in this draft. There were also a lot of head-scratching picks made in this draft. What were your worst picks?
I got 2 again. Number 1 is, pick number 14, Javon Kinlaw to San Francisco, the defensive tackle. Now, he's a great talent. But the thing is, San Francisco had the number 13 overall pick. They traded down 1 slot to 14, and they also got a pick later in the draft. But they had their choice of all the wide receivers still on the board. Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb, whatever, Justin Jefferson, like whoever you wanted, you could have taken a wide receiver. And when you look at their depth chart, they don't really have a wide receiver other than Deebo Samuel, but is that a true number 1? And then after you look at that, who's your number 2? And if you had all 3 of those guys still on the board, I kind of expected watching that they would take Jerry Jeudy. I personally, I think Jeudy is the best of that 3. But whatever you want to say, pick one of the 3 and go with them. I think not taking that was a bad decision, and going defense too, especially when San Francisco has one of the best defenses in the entire league.
I disagree with this.
Wow.
Because I think you look at San Francisco's identity, okay? Yes, Kyle Shanahan gets the attention, but this team was identified in its pass rush. The 4 guys that they had on the pass rush and its defense. That it's a defensive-minded team that just so happens to have a really good offensive coach. And when you look at San Francisco, they faced a dilemma this offseason because they had both Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner who were coming up on their contracts. You can't pay both of them. You got to choose one. So they choose Armstead. They move Buckner to the Colts for that 13th overall pick. And now you've just drafted his ready-made replacement in Javon Kinlaw. I mean, he is as good as Derrick Brown. He is as good a pass rusher as Derrick Brown in this draft class. You're getting him on a rookie contract. You move away a top guy that you have to pay a ton of money that you can't pay, because you've got other guys coming up that you have to pay. You move back a pick, get the guy you wanted all along, because I'm pretty convinced that Kinlaw is the guy they wanted, and he comes in and fills that hole right from the get-go, and San Francisco doesn't miss a beat. I actually really like this pick from John Lynch.
I mean, there's a simple answer for all of that. They don't need defensive help. They need offensive help. But let's keep moving. My second worst pick of this one comes at number 62, and that is an ACC guy, A.J. Dillon to Green Bay. Now, I think Green Bay I don't know what they were doing, what their picks, where their mind was when they were trying to draft this year. But first they go QB first round, and I think you're going to touch on that later. But then they go running back in the second round. You already have Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. What are you thinking? Like, what is in your mind to say, all right, I want A.J. Dillon, the guy that can't run fast, that has tree trunks of legs, which I will give him credit for that. He has some thick legs. But the thing is, they don't need that. And I would even argue Zach Moss was still on the board. The Utah running back was still on the board, and they chose Dillon over him. You can make an argument that you would rather have Moss on there if you really wanted to go running back, if you really thought that Aaron Jones would ask for too much next offseason and you didn't want to pay him and you want to find a replacement, then go Moss. Don't go A.J. Dillon. I think this was just a piss-poor effort by the Green Bay Packers and a horrible decision, and I can't even give any type of credit to an ACC guy, even though I want to. I just think picking A.J. Dillon at pick number 62 is overrating him and a horrible fit for the team that actually decided to take him.
I mean, here's the thing with that. Like, it's not even you can make the argument Zach Moss is better. Zach Moss is just flat out better.
Thank you.
There were like two or three running backs that are flat out better than A.J. Dillon and better NFL prospects and better fits. So I agree with you. I just have no clue where Matt LaFleur's mind was during this draft.
No idea.
My worst picks, 2 of them, both quarterbacks. Number 1, Justin Herbert to the Chargers is number 6. As a Broncos fan, I loved this pick because I look at Justin Herbert and I see Mitch Trubisky. He is like a souped-up version of Mitch Trubisky. I get it. He's got plenty of arm talent, awesome raw athleticism. But when you watch his tape, one game he will look like a superhuman, and one game he looks like a bum. And he is just so maddeningly inconsistent that I don't know how, if I'm the Chargers, I can take this guy and trust him with the keys to my franchise, especially when they have such a good defense. They're in a position to try and get back into the playoffs. And the guy you draft is a guy who, for 4 years at Oregon, never really got better. 4-year starter, never improved that much. His accuracy issues are really big. His decision-making is poor. I had a second-round grade on him, if I'm being honest, and he went number 6 overall. And I think that says everything that I need to say about Justin Herbert. The other guy, another quarterback, Jordan Love. This was the pick that surprised everybody. And is there a little bit of logic that I can see in the Green Bay's mind when they made this pick? A little. Here's the problem, though. Aaron Rodgers is not under contract until 2020. He's not under contract until 2021 or 2022. Aaron Rodgers is under contract until 2023. And so you drafted his replacement in 2020. I get it. You want to pull the Favre Rodgers thing, but here's what this ignores. We are in a new era of the CBA of bargaining agreements where the most valuable asset you can have in the NFL is a good rookie quarterback, a good quarterback on their rookie contract. You look at teams that win, the Texans with Deshaun Watson, the Rams with Jared Goff, the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. If you have a good quarterback, you don't have to pay a lot. It is a huge, huge advantage. And Jordan Love, sure, he's a good prospect. He's got lots of potential, and the theory is right that you develop him behind Aaron Rodgers. But then you're going to get him, and you're going to have to pay him after 1 year, after 2 years. And you lose all assets that you could get by having a good quarterback that is cost-controlled. And using a first-round pick when you as a team went to a conference championship game last year, that's just the wrong move building this roster.
No, I mean, I completely agree. 2 bad picks, especially I don't, again, I've said it before, but the Packers, I think, completely whiffed on this draft and have really struggled. But let's move on to our last little NFL draft topic so we can keep this moving. The best class. I have the Minnesota Vikings. They had 16 picks. They replaced Stephon Diggs with Justin Jefferson, who, in my opinion, is wide receiver 4 off the board after those top 3. They lost 3 big corners with especially Xavier Rhodes leaving. And then they add 3, and Jeff Gladney is a top 5 cornerback in this draft. They snag him with their second pick, and I think that fits that little gap that they had. And then they also shored up their defensive front 7, lots of linebackers, lots of defensive line players that they drafted, and someone that's really underrated that I think could have a great pro career is Ezra Cleveland out of Boise State. He can contribute almost immediately, probably this season, at least in my opinion. And they got him, I think, with their 3rd pick.
I think it was a 3rd round.
Steal. The left tackle will help them out immediately. They knew what their gaps were and what their needs were, and they attacked it immediately. And I got to give a round of applause for the Vikings.
Yeah, no, I love the Vikings draft. I love what Mike Zimmer did with both his offense and his defense. But I think you mentioned it, understanding what needs are and attacking them aggressively. My best draft class, fine. Call me a homer for it. It's the Broncos. I thought they had the best draft class. And to understand, you have to understand the context of this team because basically since 2015, they have wandered in the proverbial desert of the NFL because they didn't have a quarterback. I mean, Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch, Brandon Allen, Joe Flacco, Case Keenum, none of those guys were inspiring. And what happened at the end of last season was Drew Lock came in and almost instantly made you sit up in your chair more than any of those other guys did. You went, oh, this kid might be something. And I think John Elway did that too because he came into this draft and said, we're going to get you some weapons, kid. And that is, listen, that's exactly what he did. This Broncos receiver core, they needed a shot, an injection right into the arm. Emmanuel Sanders was their second leading receiver, Jaron, and he was traded halfway through the season. So they needed, I said it, not 1, but 2 receivers. Their first couple of picks, Jerry Jeudy at 15 is an absolute steal. I am amazed that he fell all the way to them. He's a 1,000-yard receiver right out the gate next to Cortland Sutton. And in the second round, they go and get KJ Hamler, who I think he didn't run the combine. He's the second fastest guy in this draft. And if he did, there's a chance that might have started with a 4.2. I mean, he is that fast. and they got plenty of help on the offensive line. No, it's not a tackle, which they wanted, but Lloyd Cushenberry is a great pick. People said he was the MVP of that LSU team. And Netane Muti, top-tier guard that were only fell to the 6th round because of injuries. This team got Drew Lock weapons. And more importantly, they put themselves in a position where if Casey wants to take him to a track meet, they can go to a track meet twice a year and have at least a shot of doing that. And before this draft, you really couldn't say that they had a shot of keeping pace with Kansas City. It's on Drew Lock now, but they have a shot now, and that's full credit to John Elway. I loved his draft.
Wow. All right, well, let's move on from the NFL draft. We're already halfway through this webisode edition of No Pulp. Let's move on to some college sports. And obviously, we all know how the coronavirus pandemic has shut down the college sports world. Spring sports absolutely canceled, in the garbage, done for the year. And so the NCAA has granted all spring sport athletes an extra year of eligibility. Cam, I think you and I both agree that this is the right decision. So now the question becomes, how will the NCAA's decision impact the future of spring sports?
Yeah, Jaron, this absolutely was the right decision, but it was a decision that is made, and there's a lot of things that have to be sorted out by the NCAA. Because suddenly you have an entire class that is just staying, and they're not going. And there are plenty of issues with that. Scholarships, chief among them. You have teams and athletic departments that have budgeted for years into the future on, we will have this amount of scholarships to give out every year. And suddenly you're adding 5, maybe 10 more scholarships that you have to pay that you didn't account for financially. So it's a financial strain on top of everything that's already happened. They've lost their revenues. They've lost their ticket sales. For sports that had that, we're talking about potentially college football season being pushed back, played without fans. It is a tough time to be an athletic department, and now you have to figure out the financials of more scholarships. Plus, there's freshmen that were promised playing time that now they don't necessarily have it. So you're going to have a logjam. You're going to have people redshirting. You're going to have freshmen transferring. It's a tough situation. Was it the right call? Yes, but there's a lot of far-reaching effects of this.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a logjam right now. Now, I don't think, in my own opinion, that logjam will be there for 4 years, which theoretically it should be if it stays like that. I don't think many athletes are going to take that extra year because only star players are going to do that. If you're a bench warmer, you're not going to waste a year of your life in starting your actual career to go back to college and sit and watch the sports and the games from the sideline. You're not going to see many people do that. There's also going to be a lot of star athletes that don't really need that extra year. They instead are going to be able to go to the pros after however many years that they are actually having so far. And my last argument for this one is just, I don't think this will happen in a couple of years, because down the road, people aren't going to really be thinking about this that much. It's going to be a thought of the past. Many people and many players are deciding to take that extra year right now because it's a recency thing. It's, wow, I just got my senior year stripped away. I'm sad. It's just a lot of feelings that are building up in the moment, and that's when they decide, I want to come back. I want to be able to play that final season. But if you're a freshman that still gets 3 full years hoping that this pandemic ends and we get back to normalcy as soon as possible, if you have those 3 years to play, I don't think you're going to say, all right, I'm going to pay another year to do my master's program, or I'm going to put off starting my actual career. If you're not going to play professional sports, I'm not going to put off that career 1 more year for just 1 more year of playing this sport. I think it'll start to taper down, and you won't see the impact for too much longer. Maybe a year or 2 will be a big log jam, and then it will slowly start to dissipate throughout the future.
I think you're right that this will dissipate, but I do think there's an aspect of being on a team and competing for that's going to keep a lot of people there, especially when they had seasons taken away from them. Listen, I think the sport that this affects the most is lacrosse, NCAA lacrosse. Right. There's a lot of good teams, and in particular the Ivy League. Most people agree it was the best conference in lacrosse last year. Well, they don't let grad students play, and they held firm on that rule that graduate players could not play. So we have seen people having to move on. none more so than Michael Sowers. You are talking about Princeton's all-time leading scorer in just 3 years and 5 games, second in career points per game in NCAA history to 2020 Wharton favorite. He's transferring from Princeton.
All right, well, that is your reporting from your CitrusTV men's lacrosse beat reporter, Cam Macaulay. But Cam, let's move on. We talked about lacrosse. Now let's talk about football. The NCAA has implemented a few rule changes for college football. Cam, we're going to do a little thing. It's going to be rapid fire. I'm going to read off the changes. I want you just to give me your reaction. All right?
Fire away.
Cool. So the first one, the first new rule change, players who are flagged for targeting will be allowed to stay on the sideline with the rest of their teammates instead of being sent to the locker room, which they had previously had to do. And the change is in an effort to speed up the game and not allow fans to boo players off the field. Cam, your thoughts?
I think this is a sensible move. Again, it's something that you can take away that takes, a minute or two off the game. Again, you're not, especially if they're at a road stadium walking in and fans are waving goodbye to the player. It's something that makes sense.
All right. Next rule change is also in an effort to speed up games. There's now a 2-minute limit for instant replay reviews, except for plays at the end of games that are complicated. They don't have that 2-minute limit, but they are encouraged to do it as quickly as possible. Cam, your reaction?
Listen, I'm glad they kept the limit off for those really crucial plays at the end of games. I'm not sure about this because I always tend to lean with these calls, let the referees make the right call as opposed to speed up the game. I think people who want to speed it up are being, be careful what you wish for, because then if a call gets made wrong, against your team, you're going to be furious about it, and it'll be like, well, you wanted this. I trust the refs. They need as much time as they want to have to make the right call, and we may see a few rushed calls because of this, and that's something that I'm not huge on.
Yeah. It kind of feels like they're working under pressure, and that might lead to some iffy calls, but let's move on. Now, the final one isn't really a rule change, but instead a problem that the NCAA is dealing with right now. Almost 20 coaches associations wrote to NCAA President Mark Emmert recently asking for a temporary relief from several Division I membership requirements amid the coronavirus pandemic. D1 schools are required to field at least 14 teams, but many schools can't do that at the current point in time. Cam, if you were Emmert, what would you do?
This is a tough call because it's easy for me to sit here and say they should keep programs when I don't know the financials of the NCAA. I don't know the financial situation of the schools. And that's something that you really have to take into account. But giving teams license to cancel programs is, for me, a last ditch. I mean, genuinely, you've exhausted every single other option you could get before you start doing this. We've already seen the effects, and my worry with this is, it could be quote unquote temporary relief, but they may cancel a program with the intention of bringing it back in 4 years, and then it's 5 years, and then it's 6 years, and then it's 10 years, and then it just never comes back. We saw Cincinnati cancel their men's soccer program, and man, I feel for those kids. I really do. You're talking about guys who worked their butts off throughout high school, throughout college to get where they are, and then the program is canceled and they have to go find a new home or give up the sport that they love. That is such a tough thing to put on a 20-year-old, on a 21-year-old, on a 22-year-old, when they're still making these decisions, and maybe they love being at Cincinnati, but now they have to go find another place to play. I want to minimize those situations. Give the people who committed to play college sports at a school the chance to leave on their own terms, and canceling programs is the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, yep, totally agree.
Well, listen, in terms of basketball, we're getting to basketball, transferring. The biggest name in college basketball in terms of transfers and in terms of physical status, the biggest person, Matt HAARMS, made his decision. The former Purdue center is going to Brigham Young. BYU, he averaged 8.6 points, 4.6 boards, and 2 blocks this season for the Boilermakers. He is immediately eligible. So let me ask you, how much did he move the needle for what was a very good BYU team?
Yeah, I mean, they were already really, really talented. Their one struggle, and especially next year when you look to the future, is the inside, and that's how HAARMS will help them out. They're losing Yoli Childs, who led the team with 9 rebounds per game, and now you put in HAARMS, and that's just going to replace him and fill that gap immediately. BYU was also 6th in rebound margin last season in the West Coast Conference. So you add a great guy like HAARMS into that system, and he's going to help them out. They were only 2 games behind Gonzaga, and Gonzaga was one of the best teams in the entire country last year. Now, obviously, the WCC is not one of the best conferences in the entire country. It's really just Gonzaga and BYU. You can make a couple different arguments for other teams, but not really. So, yes, I think this addition will help BYU, and it's kind of just going to be a pick-em between Gonzaga and BYU for the favorite for the West Coast Conference this year. I really like the addition of HAARMS for BYU.
Well, let me say this first. I think my favorite thing from HAARMS talking about this was that he mentioned that he's like, hey, this is different when I was in high school. I'm not picking a place I have to stay for 4 years. I only am here for 8 months, and I think that's a complete dig at living in Utah from Matt HAARMS. But listen, is it a good addition? Yes. Is it going to get them closer to Gonzaga? I'm not sure, because here's the thing. Gonzaga is also getting a lot better. They have a guy in Jalen Suggs who is their highest ranked recruit ever. And they have Drew Timme, who was a 5-star last year at power forward. And they have guys who, okay, they've entered the NBA draft, but there is still a shot that they come back. You're talking about Corey Kispert, Joel Ayayi, and Philip Petrusev. They could return a lot of that team. And at the end of the day, HAARMS was benched towards the second half of that season for Trevion Williams at Purdue. Is he a good player? Yes. Is he going to move the needle that much? I don't really know.
All right, well, that's men's basketball. Let's move on and quickly touch on our last topic of this webisode edition of No Pulp, and it's all about women's basketball. Hall of Fame Notre Dame head coach Muffet McGraw is retiring after 33 years. She finished with a 77 winning percentage and 2 national titles. Cam, how will her departure impact both Notre Dame and all of collegiate women's basketball?
I mean, this is huge. This is one of the people on the Mount Rushmore of women's basketball leaving the program. I mean, Muffet McGraw is unquestionably up there, unquestionably one of the best coaches in the country, and she's up there. And this is going to be a huge loss for college basketball. Here's what I'll touch upon, though. I thought that in terms of having a living legend leave a program, this was handled about as well as it could have been handled by Notre Dame. There were no leaks. There were no rumors. It kind of felt like it came out of the blue. And you know what? Muffet McGraw, she had said she was taking it a year at a time. We only found that out after she retired. We didn't really know that that was the case until she retired. And then about a day later, they've already hired her replacement. You can tell this was thought out. You can tell this was well communicated between the athletic department and the basketball team and McGraw. And it was just perfectly well handled. This is the trademark for transitioning on from a legendary coach. When Jim Boeheim leaves at Syracuse, when Mike Krzyzewski leaves at Duke, when Roy Williams leaves at North Carolina, they will pay attention to this because this is the blueprint for how to do that. And total credit to Notre Dame's athletic director, Jack Swarbrick, because he handled this about as well as you could handle it.
Yeah, and I mean, Notre Dame isn't going to be really taking too big of a step down with their replacement with Ivy. She was an assistant under McGraw for 17 years. So she knows the system. She's helped recruiting. McGraw actually finished the recruiting class this year, so she's leaving them kind of with a gift of that recruiting class. And then you put in Ivy, where she's a great coach. She can fit right in. And this Notre Dame women's lacrosse program has always been historically great. So I don't see them taking too big of a dip in the coming years, even without McGraw and even without her amazing legacy that she leaves at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Ivy was a great choice. She's been, like you said, she's been with the program forever. She was most recently an NBA assistant coach, which that's a very good seal of approval that she was doing that. I think she's ready to come in and leave her mark on the program. I think, again, her relationship with McGraw is going to mean that she's not going to be in her shadow. She can kind of forge her own path, and they do have a great recruiting class. Again, total credit. This was handled about as well as it could. Anyway, that'll bring us to the end of this No Pulp webisode / podcast. Cameron Macaulay alongside Jaron May. Make sure to follow along at CitrusTV Sports for more coverage throughout the summer as we talk more about college sports whenever news gets going. But signing off, Cameron Macaulay alongside Jaron May. We'll catch you next time on No Pulp.